In the quick turnaround, tight budget world of TV production, you'll occasionally come across what's known as a bottle episode. A normality skewing digression that shrinks events down to a single place and time. Responsible for some of the most essential television ever conceived, it's nonetheless a practice originally born of imposed limitations, where the studios stripped out all but the bare essentials to try and save themselves some cash.
I hate bottle episodes. They're wall-to-wall facial expression and emotional nuance. I might as well sit in the corner with a bucket on my head.
Even before bottle episodes became a staple of the small screen, movies had long been making mountains of the puniest molehills. By shifting focus from the macro to the micro, and training our attention on characters and creative writing over establishing shots and explosions, these small stages can offer their audience a sense of situational tension that's hard to replicate out with live theatre. As a testament to the power of solitary space, look no further than what some of the most influential comedies, dramas, sci-fis and horrors have achieved with 4 walls, some well-placed words, and the gamut of human expression.
You're a sadist.
So, what do you get when you apply these restrictions to a major studio action thriller? Stu, a New York City sleazeball, answers a public telephone only to find himself on the line and in the crosshairs of an unseen sniper. If he drops the call, steps out of the booth, or mentions this mysterious assailant to so much as a passerby, he'll be executed.
1, 2, that won't help you. 3.
It's a cat-and-mouse morality play about a once proud manipulator falling victim to the string-pulling whims of a puppet master. Phone Booth was a ground-level, high-concept knockout of a pitch long before it saw the light of day. Originally intended as an Alfred Hitchcock potboiler, not such a stretch given 3 of his most beloved works are centered around individual locations, for over 30 years, writer Larry Cohen saw the project slip through the fingers of just about every director in Hollywood. These protracted delays and its eventual 2003 release wound up colouring the final product in ways no one could have predicted. Shot before the events of September 11th, 2001, and released shortly thereafter, the sight of police and pedestrians stood aghast in a New York borough as a terror attack unfolds carries a far more visceral cultural sting than the filmmakers could have possibly foreseen. As on that dreadful day, the enormity of death and the vast expanse of NYC are shrunk down, boxed in, and broadcast in real time. Then came the DC sniper attacks of 2002, in which a series of coordinated shootings left 10 dead and a nation recoiling at the prospect of a fatal bolt from the blue. Watching Phone Booth 20 years later, it's impossible to separate its looking down the barrel anxieties from each fateful tragedy that preceded it. It also comes with a whole host of end of an era, turn of the millennium trappings, precariously on the cusp of when you could consider a payphone as a realistic plot device or logical location. Just as stationary landlines were giving way to the ubiquity of mobile phones, a shift in technology and consumption was taking place in mainstream cinema. The last gasp of practically executed mid-budget standalone blockbusters before the steamrolling influx of CGI-dominated franchises took over the box office and never let go. Beyond all the historical context that makes this an intriguing time capsule, the reason Phone Booth works so effectively is down to the relative simplicity of its presentation and the confidence of its vision.
I'm aiming at you right now. Can you feel it? The heat of it?
The principal cast can be counted on one hand, The antagonist is never clearly seen beyond a fleeting kiss-off, the violence is spare and matter-of-fact, and once you cut out the credits, the whole thing clocks in at an airtight 75 minutes. With events playing out in a box smaller than a toilet cubicle, smart decisions like these, and the economy with which Joel Schumacher makes use of every last inch of the screen, is essential. From the outside looking in, the booth is frequently shown off-center, and with a visual emphasis on the negative space surrounding it. The free air of the open city just out of reach, as the uncaring emptiness seems to overpower this minuscule point. From the inside looking out, this may as well be a prison. The audible cacophony of the city, all but fading to nothing once Stu takes the call.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny? You hear a phone ring and it could be anybody. But a ringing phone has to be answered, doesn't it?
What?
Shots from his point of view come in the form of pixelated digital videotape, rendering Stu's once familiar surroundings with a distorted uncertainty and feverish panic. As things go from bad to worse, the already minimal on-screen real estate is narrowed further by the intrusive use of picture-in-picture and split screens, each one another brick in the wall surrounding Stu as his situation escalates. Slowly, the fractured windows to the world Stu's been taking for granted are smashed and stripped away as he reckons with his past indiscretions and reaches out to those he's wronged.
I lie in person. And on the phone, I lie to my friends. I lie to newspapers and magazines who sell my lies to more and more people. I'm just a part of a big cycle of lies. I should be fucking president.
Now, none of this takes a genius to figure out, but it is a textbook example of how to do a lot with a little. Beyond its stylistic flourishes and some rat-a-tat editing, Phone Booth really is content to keep its ambitions rooted in the theatrical tradition of one place, one time, and one dilemma. This is a thriller where almost every teeth-grinding moment is the product of two men talking down a telephone line while the city swells around an increasingly oppressive cubicle. Perhaps more interestingly, whereas similar bottle films are staged in surroundings more typically suited for drama, say an apartment, an office, or a restaurant, Phone Booth exists almost entirely within a liminal space. This bustling street is a threshold, separating a starting point from a destination, and between who our protagonist was and who he needs to be to make it out of here alive. The transitional setting is consistent with the admittedly wafer-thin narrative, but there's potentially more to glean from this than its man with a gun tells another man to stop being such a piece of shit, nuts and bolts plot. There's the obvious but appreciated biblical undertones, this being a torturous confessional wherein a vengeful god offers painful absolution to a penitent but weak man, and you could even see this whole thing as a comment on cinema, where we shut out the external world and allow a directorial voice to dictate our mood and emotional state in exchange for an eventual sense of catharsis. All of this is to say, what could quite easily have been just another early 2000s Hollywood tries to make Colin Farrell happen vehicle, undone by his inability to pull off a convincing American accent, is instead proof positive that ambition, scope, and scale aren't decided by the size of a soundstage. And I don't just mean the realization that The Dark Knight completely ripped this off.
Thousands of people die every day. But you put one dead body in the middle of a busy street and it makes people crazy. Look at these guys.
If tomorrow I tell the press that, like, a gangbanger will get shot, or a truckload of soldiers will be blowing up, nobody panics. But when I say that one little old mare will die, well, then everyone loses their minds.
This isn't even the only film to hinge almost entirely on the high-pressure, limited-location claustrophobia of a telephone chinwag. Cellular is brought to us from the writer of Phone Booth and is an interesting piece of nonsense that milks the same cow with much less to show for it. Buried is a deftly handled, albeit kind of silly thriller that takes this conceit to its furthest extreme. Liberty, Stand Still, and The Call aren't really worth talking about if I'm being honest. And finally, there's Locke, which may just be one of the most underrated dramatic works of the 2010s, and the best thing Tom Hardy has ever done. Yet, what none of these manage quite as well as Phone Booth is the miracle of making an enormous place feel terrifyingly small, only to then find so much visual invention on such a tiny stage. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I think it's a great movie, but I'm also not here to bang on about Farrell's wonky performance, some enormous leaps of logic, or the borderline incoherent decisions these characters make. As major studio tentpoles remain stuck in their arms race of bland spectacle, and with the world having just spent over a year confined and afraid of the great outdoors, Phone Booth continues to ring out as a resourceful, rewarding reminder of why bigger isn't always better. A collect call directly from my heart to our Patreon producers Jennifer C., Claire MD, Becky O, and Nicholas Lair-Revere, and a high-powered sniper rifle of gratitude for all these incredible folks who support the channel over on Patreon. So what's your favourite film or TV episode that takes place in a single room, set, or stage? Make your recommendations down there in the comments, as well as sharing your thoughts and feelings about Phone Booth. The absolute best way to help this channel out is to click the like button, click the bell, leave any kind of comment down there and make sure you're subscribed, and if you're in a position to do so, consider checking out our Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month you can get your name in the credits, access to additional content, entry to our private Discord community, and a membership to the In Frame Out Film Club. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, this is In Frame Out.